Today, on the eve of the release of Samsung's most anticipated phones of the year, I bring you the non-hype version of everything we know about the Z Fold 7 that you can get really excited about. First of all, the current foldable market has some super slim phones like the Oppo M5, and that seems to be an area that Samsung is focusing on. We saw it when they released the special edition Fold 6, and obviously that was never made available in the North American market, but with the Z Fold 7, based on the recent CAD drawings, we can see a total unfolded width of about 4.5 millimeters and 9 millimeters folded. That's insane. Now, one detail that's not confirmed is whether the chin that aids in dust proofing is included in that measurement, because if it's not, then you're looking at more of a 5.5 millimeter width unfolded and about 11 millimeters folded up. Even still, the Z Fold 7 would be thinner than the current thinnest Samsung phone available, the S25 Edge. And the next design change is the weight. And fam, look, if you know me, you know I don't really care about these little things, but we have some proper rumors from multiple sources coming in from SK that the weight of the Z Fold 7 is going to be close to 215 grams. That is lighter than the S25 Ultra. It's lighter than the iPhone 16 Pro Max. The Z Fold 7 has a way bigger display and it has more displays, but it's feather light. And the reason it's big, the reason I care about that when I usually don't care about weight, is because it changes the entire foldable experience. Having something so light not only adds to the portability factor, which is important for the fold devices, but also the fact that using a super light fold might actually make usability a lot easier. And given the thinness and the lightweightness, a lot of people might start questioning whether it's actually going to be built well. Is it going to be cheaper materials? But Samsung, the one thing that I've never been able to really beat them on is build quality. Even their cheaper products like the FE and the Fan editions always have some of the best build quality available in market today. So I wouldn't be concerned about the build quality. Although we don't know exactly what materials we're going to be seeing, we can get a really good idea from the Z Fold 6 special edition, which was also built incredibly well and was also super thin. The only real point of contention here is that weight number. We don't know if it's completely real, but if you think about it, the first folds were about 280 grams. So this isn't just a gram or two, this is a pretty massive decline in weight. But some evidence we do have to support that lighter weight is the changing of the backplate to titanium and the removal of a digitizer. Oh yeah, this is where things are getting saucy. The digitizer is being removed. You know, the thing that you touch and it turns your touch into a digital function. The thing that was failing the most on the current Z Fold 6 and the Z Flip 6 devices, they are removing the digitizer completely. And because there is no more digitizer, that also takes away S Pen support. So the Z Fold 6 does have S Pen capabilities, not the Z Flip 6, but the Z Fold 6. And now, because they're removing the digitizer, there's no more S Pen support. Okay, so guys, let's take a step back real quick and think about how convenient it is that Samsung takes out, instead of fixing it, it takes out the digitizer that was failing atrociously across their previous generation, says it's to make the phone a little bit more lightweight, and is now pushing it. But they also give up the S Pen. And by the way, if you don't know, my Z Flip 6's digitizer failed twice, and every single time it failed, it was still under warranty, like it's not over a year old, but every time it failed, I would literally go into U-Break iFix and they had everything. Like, they kept digitizers on stock because they fixed my phone within 2 hours. I would go in the morning and by the afternoon my phone was fixed. And it wasn't just the digitizer they replaced every single component inside my phone. So my point is, Samsung knew there was a massive problem with the digitizer. They knew that because they kept the digitizers in stock, and I talked and chatted with the U-Break iFix guy, and he also said, yeah, it's a common issue, and you know, we've got everything in stock, so don't worry about it. But my purpose in asking that was to figure out how common this is, and from what data I gathered, it's a very common occurrence. Instead of fixing the digitizer, they just took it out completely, obviously sacrificed the S Pen, which is no small sacrifice to make, and are now pushing with the marketing line of, hey guys, super thin, super light. At this point, I know the Samsung glazers and the dick riders have gone away. All right, now we got the realist, so let's continue. First, with the display. The new outer screen is set to have a 6.5-inch display. Okay, I'll comment on that later. You know what's coming. But the inner display is supposed to get even bigger, coming in at 8.2 to 8 inches according to some leaks. That's almost an additional ½ inch of screen real estate for the inner display for a phone that is going to be lighter and thinner. Those are some awesome stats. And by the way, you know what other phone has the same screen size as the Z Fold 7, has a very similar weight, and also doesn't have S Pen support? The Z Fold 6 Special Edition, again the one that came out earlier this year but not in the North American market. So taking again all of that information together, it kind of looks like Samsung is sitting this one out, especially if this phone is essentially a copy of the Special Edition that is just made available to the North American market. Next, let's talk cameras. You see, there's an under display camera in the Special Edition that is a pinhole design, and that could very possibly mean that the Z Fold 7 will have a pinhole design camera and not an under display camera like the Z Fold 6 that is obviously invisible. Now the reason I say all of that is because Samsung is currently boxing it out with BOE and UDC in a patent lawsuit that could mean that the Z Fold 7 will also have a pinhole cutout design. And for the back cameras, nothing really to get excited about. They're basically 2023 flagship level cameras, and the Z Fold 7 should have the same ones as the Z Fold 6 Special Edition. As for processing power, we're expecting the Z Fold 7 to have the power-hungry Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, that is essentially an overclocked version of the Snapdragon 8 Elite that's in this S25 line. And as for the specific chip, there are some Geekbench stat leaks already that show that it's set to be 12 gigabytes of RAM, but it's actually running closer to 10.8 gigabytes of RAM, which is honestly a bit on the low side. Now, the next Snapdragon chip is supposed to come out in September, so with the release being in July, we are gonna miss that upgrade. And by the way, and this is where a lot of people are going to feel very sad, the Snapdragon version is only going to be available in the US version of the Flip 7 and Fold 7. The global devices are going to use EXYNOS 2500 used in the S24 Ultra, you know, the phone that came out like over a year ago. Both the Z Fold 7 and the Flip 7 are rumored to have 4300 mAh batteries, which if we get the Snapdragon 8 Elite chips coupled with the bigger batteries, might work better. But remember, right now my Flip with the 8 Gen 3 and a 4000 mAh battery really is still an all-day phone, where on some busier days I might need to charge it once. Otherwise, it's a great balance between the chip and the battery. Now, why does only the USA version get the Snapdragon chip? Is it because Lee Jae Young loves Americans? Not necessarily. It might be possible, but the reason is because ancient history. You see, Snapdragon and Qualcomm, they're the same thing, sorry. Samsung and Qualcomm signed a deal so that Samsung could get rights to sell in the American market, so they could use their devices on chips that worked in the American cellular system. However, Qualcomm was very quickly becoming very powerful, and it was so powerful that most Apple phones were also using Qualcomm chips, and Apple sued Qualcomm and has actually come out on top. This is why now you're seeing mobile chips that are being made by Apple. The M chips, obviously the M1, M2, M3, M4 are all Apple chips that are also powering mobile devices because they were able to beat this Qualcomm monopoly in a lawsuit. However, Samsung isn't going to have that same luck. Again, Apple's American, Qualcomm's American. So in American courts, you know, it's possibly a fair game. However, Samsung is Korean against an American company. If Samsung wins this, it's going to include major losses for Qualcomm. So it has been an uphill battle for Samsung. In a way, it's good for us because that means the US market still keeps its Snapdragon chips, which are obviously on all accounts better chips. Undoubtedly. So those are all of the known rumors for the Z Fold 7, and that's all we really need to know to understand the fact that this is not going to be a revolutionary device, and certainly based on the rumors alone is not a device that's going to redeem Samsung this year. It really feels like Samsung is just sitting this one out. Look, they took out the digitizer instead of fixing the digitizer, just took it out, saved 0.8 millimeters off the thinness of the device and sacrificed the S Pen to create the new productivity ultimate machine. It makes absolutely no sense. Their marketing might, work on the glazers, but us on the sugar-free diets, we're not gonna fall for it. We kind of see right through them. We know this is not gonna be a product that's going to have value, especially, and I say this because guys, there's phones like the Google Fold, right? Why is the Google Fold absolutely destroying the Z Fold 7? The Google Fold is heavier, the Google Fold is fatter, but people still prefer the Google Fold over the Z Fold. Why? Because the Google Fold's outer display is usable. That's it. There's nothing more to it. If you read the Amazon reviews, if you go through any customer feedback whatsoever, you will know that the reason people prefer the Google Fold over the Z Fold is because the outer display is usable. The Z Fold's outer display is long and narrow, and most apps aren't even optimized to work on that kind of a display, so it is really a hassle to get anything done on a super long, small, and narrow display. You can't even easily type emails or responses because you get a very thin, narrow keyboard versus the Google Fold, which is a much more less of a compromise over a regular smartphone display. And there's no way Samsung doesn't know. There's no way that they don't know that that's the way they have to go. And the funniest part is that Google Folds are using Samsung displays. So Google is using the Samsung display, it's just also beating Samsung at its own game. And the same can be said about this thinness and lightness game. The Oppo M5 is still going to be thinner than the Z Fold. It's still going to be lighter than the Z Fold in the Chinese market, and it's been out for a very long time. So it just doesn't make sense. For those of us who have a few neurons left, and you can kind of see through all of these narratives, all of the rumors and propaganda, and even Samsung's own marketing to find out that they're not trying to win this year, and they're not even desperate to win. Their whole marketing has been very, very toned down. They released the S25 Edge in the middle of last month, randomly, just a phone out of nowhere, no one really cared about. It flopped so bad 1 month after the device came out for $1,000. Currently it's on eBay for $699. It's an over $300 drop in price in 1 month of the phone being out. A fresh new phone, not even refurbished, new, okay? So the same idea with the Z Fold 7. I don't think it's worth buying based off the rumors, but we're gonna see when we've seen the Galaxy Unpacked event. One of the people who commented on my video last time, it was like, "Guy, you're not getting invited to the Galaxy Unpacked event." Great, I don't want to be there. Okay, I want to be. I'll talk. I'll pay. I'll get the Z Fold with my own money. Okay, I'll buy it so that I can tell you guys about it and not read a script that Samsung provides, telling me what to tell you about it. Okay, that's how it is here. Until next time, take it easy. Peace.